So, friends on YouTube, welcome. We're delighted to have you with us, and thank you for joining us for the 14th in our series of congregational finances during the pandemic. I need to tell you, I've never done a webinar series of 14 before. We're into uncharted territory, and clearly Eric and Clyde are rock stars. So delighted to have you with us, and thanks for joining us. And you have offered such wonderful, warm feedback to these webinars. We're so glad that they're making a difference for you. And thanks for joining us as we come back to you over and over and over again. My name is Stephen Fetter, and I manage the United in Learning program for the General Council Office. I also am a minister in a church, and that's where I am tonight. I'm here at Forest Hill United Church in my church office, and delighted to be working with you from here. My own church treasurer has been so pleased with the information that we've received. It has made a big difference to our congregation here in Forest Hill too. So Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you and invite you to draw us in, and thank you again for the work that you're doing and for your leadership again tonight. Over to you.
We've got a lot of folks right before us, Clyde and Angelica and others behind the scenes too, Kate and Aaron and others tracking the chat box. So thanks everybody. Frankly, I'm sorry we all feel this is as necessary as we seem to feel it is, but these are exceptional times. Before we begin, I'd just like to do an acknowledgement. The four of us that I see on the screen, at least, Stephen, Angelica, Clyde, and myself are all in the Toronto area. And so we are broadcasting from the traditional lands here, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I'm actually just glad to be able to say I'm in a country that respects that kind of thing. We see different behaviors in other settings these days. So regulars will know that the first slide I start with is always the new creed and how we are called to be church and to celebrate God's presence during this completely unprecedented time. For all of us, we're all managing circumstances that we never thought we would do, whether that's as a volunteer, as an employee, as a family person, it doesn't really matter. So yes, this is the 14th. We took a few weeks off in the summer. The rate of change has slowed down, but there's still a lot going on. And when Stephen and Clyde and I sort of come up with what we might talk about, in the old days, I could agree on something 3 months in advance and work on my deck and then show up and do it. And these days, I literally do these things the afternoon of the webinar just to have the most current stuff. So royal assent was given to the most recent changes, and we'll talk a little bit about it. That's both for the emergency wage subsidy, the bank program, and the new renters program. A whole bunch of admin stuff, but we also want to focus a little bit on next year, 2021 budget preparations. There's questions about AGMs, all that kind of stuff. We've got the long-awaited and some more information, there'll be more information every little while on the ADP upgrade, which was very well received when I briefly mentioned it last time. So that's what we're looking to cover. And as I keep saying, thank you for what you do for the church right now, because none of us signed up for this. None of us signed up for what we're managing right now. So a reminder again that so much of the broader church work, whether it's in the regions or at the denomination or around the world, is made possible by your missions and service support from your congregations, from individuals, and we count on that to make so much. And frankly, the most exciting bits of our work together is funded by Mission and Service. We are monitoring, the mission and service receipts coming in. They've ramped up a little bit in the last while, but just a reminder that if folks have designated monies and made those gifts, if you could get them submitted. And we have, of course, now more electronic means to do that if that's your preference, but very gratefully received. So, just one general comment before I dive in. So many of you folks have been with us through the series, and but there could be some new folks out there too. So for the new folks, let me say we are not going to focus on the guts of any of one of these programs. If you want to know more of step-by-step how to do a wage subsidy application, the August 12th webinar still has most of the detail on that. Frankly, going back to the ones this spring probably isn't worth it because so much has changed. So I do include a lot of material here that we will speak to very quickly. For example, I'm guessing that virtually everyone on this webinar knows that all the federal programs hook off electronic applications, and there's basically you have to have a My Business account or a representative arrangement to access any of these programs. Clyde is our guru on this stuff. He's still working. Most of you have your accounts. All the single point charges tend to be looked after. There's probably one or two messed up, mismatching business numbers out there, but it tends to be the multi-point charges that where there's still a few odd situations that we're trying to navigate and sort out with the CRA. But we do have a help desk for that, and Clyde is the backbone of that. Rose Camborne and Carla Hacker are the first level responders, and then Clyde is our expert. So just internal governance, all the wage and rental subsidy applications don't need a region approval. The rental programs are, even though they might be called forgivable loans in certain contexts, are really like a grant, so they don't either. Loan applications of actual loans do require approval. I think there's some latitude on line of credit arrangements that people use for financing day to day. And so a number of these slides are repeat, and I'm going to go faster as we go through some of them. So there's also been a ton of communication to you folks, probably more than you want, and just a reminder that you didn't sign on for it. But we've gotten you the most updated assessment information, both for 2020 and for the coming year. We of course have these 3 webinars. More time sensitive was an advisory on D&O insurance. We didn't expect to hear from it very many, if anybody, but there was a technical legal requirement for us to solicit reporting of any D&O claims because we're switching carrier. Just last week, you would have gotten the first formal notice, the broadcast to treasurers and I think ADP administrators of some various lists that we try to get to people about the ADP payroll service upgrade.
Eric, I need to interrupt. I'm sorry. Alphabet soup. What is D&O?
Sorry, directors and officers insurance, and I will be speaking to it in more detail a little later on.
Perfect. Forgive my ignorance.
Not at all. So in any case, you've gotten a number of emails, and some of them, you're being asked to act on, and we'll recap most of that tonight. Okay, this is a repeat slide, but for anyone new, there's 2 wage subsidy programs. One was a short-term one in the spring, where you basically just were allowed to dip into the income tax withholding bucket of your payroll to grant yourself some money. And the way that was done was through ADP. The 75% and now declining percentage program is the main program that is still running and has just now been extended into June of next year. June. So with the Qs, extension to June, like I've got this slide mainly to give you a recap of how things have changed, but most importantly, it's been extended to June. For the first while, there was rigid rules. You had to have this 30% revenue drop to qualify. Lots of folks just missed, or even had a 20%. Still a very painful drop. So the government responded, and now any revenue drop potentially qualifies you for some degree of wage subsidy, and it is on a sliding scale. All the confusing stuff, the attestations and the calculators at various times didn't work so well, but now they do. So now we don't spend a lot of time talking about them unless someone needs, some real, I'm going to say, hand-holding. The spreadsheets are relatively user-friendly. So the news announced last week, or more correctly, approved, I guess, by the Senate and the Governor General, if that's how it works, is that the program's extended to June, and we know how it works until December. There's a maximum level of 65%, but frankly, most of you won't see that. You need to have huge, huge revenue dips to get much more than 40 or 42%. So the spreadsheet will calculate all that for you, and there's a couple of revisions to rules that, for the most part, will affect very few, if any of you. Just unusual situations, like if you actually have a furloughed employee or someone coming back from long-term leave. Right now, period 8 is open. I applied for my folks applied for period 8 this week. And the spreadsheet works well. It was literally updated just a couple of days ago, and we know it works. And if you're at the stage where you're actually up current and applying for the most current period, it's there for you. And here's a chart, again, for those of you who want to go back and see the slides of the periods that we know about, and the dates and what you use, the possible comparisons that you can use. Again, a reminder that there was a change in the summer for periods 5 to 9. You could make a one-time change and switch your method. Most of us are comparing any particular month this year compared to any particular month last year. But there is an option. There was an option, and you might have elected it, to switch your method and start comparing to the average of January and February. And if your church is one that is light on donations earlier in the year, or they skew towards the back half of the year, that might have some appeal. By the same token, you would have had rental income or other forms of income back then. So I know of one or two charges that have chosen to go this route, but it's there, and the best way to do it would, if you're just doing it now, would be to literally play with the spreadsheet and compare the two scenarios.
Before you jump ahead, Eric, a couple of questions there. Could you show the previous slide again with the dates on it, please?
Sure.
And somebody's saying the period 9 ends at November 21. When is it going to be open for applications?
When the government says so.
And you don't know?
Unless or until it says. Clyde, do you have any more on that?
Yeah, it'll be the first week of December, probably, because you have to wait until you've got your November revenues recorded so that you can do the comparisons.
Yeah.
There you go. And Dave Pratt is saying November 30 is what it says online. So
there we go. And I want to point out that the spelling mistake on November is in the government's chart, and it's not on me. In any case, any other questions on that?
Yeah, one here. Our minister is retiring in December. Will we be able to get the cues if we're so fortunate as to hire a new minister in the new year?
The government doesn't know or frankly care who the people are and what their individual circumstance is. You basically input your numbers into the spreadsheet. So when you have a new minister, you might have a gap, you might not, but whatever month we're talking about, when you input your compensation costs into the spreadsheet, and it'll calculate what your degree of entitlement is. But the short answer is yes. Someone leaving or gaps in replacement and so on are taken into account.
Thanks. One other question here. Can I go back to period 1 if I haven't appeared at all, if I haven't applied yet at all for Qs?
Absolutely. And if that person is a relative newbie here, the worksheets have changed. Way in the spring, we didn't have any of the actual recording of revenue on the worksheets. Now you would. And on one level, it'll have a cleaner audit trail for you. So yes, you can go all the way back to period 1 if you want.
Oh, and lots of questions here. When there's no minister since August and we get a new minister in January, February, can we collect then?
Again, the spreadsheet has some rules built into it in terms of what your compensation costs were. Clyde, do you have a comment on that? Just I haven't paid as close attention to it.
Yeah, for new employees, whether they're clergy or admin staff, doesn't matter. If they do not have or did not have payroll for January through March 15th, then the base salary is going to be 0 to compare it with. Well, there's a calculation for the work out the average weekly amount.
Okay.
And if there was no minister, for instance, or somebody's coming back off a leave that was prior, where they didn't, where they weren't employed actively on payroll, then their base amount is 0 and the new amount is worked out, and it all works out beautifully in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
But again, any sort of increase, decrease, and so on, you literally just populate the numbers and see what happens. And believe me, we weren't saying this in the spring.
Yeah.
No.
So there's a few questions that are coming up that are very specific to an individual situation, and I would say let's direct those directly to Clyde and the CRA helps email, and let's not take the time on a national webinar to pick up really specific questions like that.
Okay.
We'll give you the email address for how to get personalized help from Clyde or Eric at the end of the webinar tonight.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll keep going, and any question you ask me, I'll try to answer.
Yep.
So I haven't even looked to see if the attestations have changed. They used to change every month. But again, for anyone who's new, we explain certain boxes that you might need to tick, because one of the things you do when you file online is you're also basically certifying that certain things are true. So this is the quote unquote elections or attestations. Again, it's for any new people to be able to go back and look at these slides, or if, as I say, if you need help, we'll take you through the help desk. So the other new item is the new rental program, the one where if we were a church and we had tenants who lost revenue, we had to do a whole bunch of work and get various forms and so on. That was frankly one of the failures of all the government programs, and it's been replaced where if a tenant, it could be anybody, but let's just say it was a daycare or a school or something, they now claim directly. The money doesn't flow through the church as landlord. They claim directly. Frankly, a lot less administrative hassle would be my view. And the application process has just opened now. And basically they're saying that if tenants apply by November 30th, they should be getting their money within a few days. This is one of these automated approval processes. So the key with this program is, I don't think this new program is anything that 98% of our churches need to worry about. If you are renting space, and if you have, frankly, huge revenue drops, then you might qualify for this program. But those two if statements are going to be very rare in the United Church. And again, I have one of these, how it's changed from what the original program, which was called the CECRA, and now is the direct program. I have this in here for any newbies who might feel a need to look at it. But generally, the one program wrapped up, and there's nothing, you can't go back in. I think the one possible exception is if you got an extension before October, if you happen to apply for that. And I haven't paid close attention because I consider this program largely wound up, and the new one that we don't have to have much dealing with. So the 10% subsidy program, most are complete. I'd probably say like 95% complete. We've learned through all of this that there's some odd duck situations. There's some cases where probably even, administrative errors have been made and so on. Normal cleanup when you've got this huge influx of work that we were dealing with. I continue to say trust the system. Folks are probably getting a little impatient with that, but we're working through a few exceptions, and we will all need to complete something called a PD 27, which basically says from which pay were wage subsidies deducted. And that is something that, the normal payroll reporting person, which is the treasurer, would need to complete as, the same way you would be signing off on a T4 summary or something like that.
Excuse me a minute, Eric. It's not the wage subsidy that you deducted. It's the wage subsidy that was claimed. Because you can claim a 10%, but not deduct it until 2 or 3 months later if your buckets are not big enough.
That's an excellent point. Noted. The point being that how much you're claiming for that period, and I guess technically it should be, I guess it should be, 10% is the maximum you could claim for each period, and that doesn't necessarily match what the income tax bucket was hit for, right?
Well, and that speaks to a question that came in from Jim Smith, who says we've got very small buckets, and so we haven't actually collected our whole 10% and won't by the end of December. Are they going to continue to allow us to collect it through 2021?
Yeah, so that's a nice lead into my next slide. So the short answer is yes. You can claim this right up until we're doing, the final payroll reconciliation of your T4 summary filing. And right now, there's even talk that the normal sort of due date of April could be extended because the government, put these in place, but all payroll companies are scrambling to figure out how to do it. So we are working with ADP to do one of two things: either deliver to you a populated form for you to sign, or deliver to you the information for each field that you would need to use to populate the form. So that's the game plan. We literally are supposed to get something this week, Friday. We think we might have more information for you next week. And I make no guarantees that it's final then either. This is one of these things that's been a rush thing that we made up to try to help everybody through this process. So more on this to come. At some point, we will be coming out to every authorized ADP administrator and making sure that they can comply with this requirement. I've had a few questions about the amounts in your T4 boxes, these new boxes on the T4 summary. And again, there's a requirement that the government is going to try to reconcile to CERB claims and various things by the information that's provided on T4 boxes. I don't know how they're going to do it. My answer has been, I don't care what's in those boxes. it's an information item, and it's the job of the payroll companies to populate it correctly. However, if there is anyone out there that is literally doing all of this manually, then there are some more guides in the T4 processing guide around exactly what information to put in these boxes. But as far as I'm concerned, that's ADP's job, and I'm not even going to look at it. Clyde?
On the test T4s that they sent out at the end of October, these boxes were already populated, and I have verified about 50 of them with different pay periods and that, and they all work out exactly what I expected.
Good. Well, that's further proof that Clyde is way more diligent than I am.
I won't sign unless I know.
Yeah. Okay. So just again, we're going to just go through the programs. The bank program, if you go to the CEBA site, it still does not have the new information. Some people are worried. Some people who've been successful getting the $40,000 loan program are all keen to get the extra 20 that has been announced just in the last couple of months. However, there's no information on that. We don't want people to, if you're new, we don't want you to get hyped up. It's a fairly restricted audience. This particular program is targeted to small business and isn't available to just all our churches. In fact, it's only available to our churches that have material amounts, and I'm not quite sure what that means, the word material, but that have amounts on line 4610. Oh, I've still got that old typo, and 4640. 4640 on the T3010. You need to be reporting revenue either from rentals or from sale of goods and services, not fundraising income. So I'm watching that every day. And if you're one of those people that thinks that either wants to apply for the $40,000 loan program, or certainly to top up to the 60, be watching that CEBA website, because at some point fairly soon they'll have the information you need to go back to your bank. And Steve, let me just say that that's a bad typo. So I'm going to send you fresh slides.
I just changed it on my copy, Eric.
Okay, great.
So there you go.
This is why
hot off the press.
This is what a team we've got. These folks back me up so well that sometimes I even look good.
There we go. So before you jump into that, let's take a couple of questions then about queues. Ivan Richardson from YouTube says, is there a maximum for all claims on the 9 periods? Is there a maximum for an employer, or is it really just a percentage of your payroll?
It's a percentage of your payroll, full stop.
Great.
There are huge companies claiming tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions.
Thank you. Somebody else on YouTube is saying they're kind of anticipating when we get into April. And what month are we going to compare April 21's income to? Are we going to go to April 2020, which was already really low? Or do we get to go back to April 2019? How does that going to work?
We have no details whatsoever of 2021.
Okay.
And it's a great question. But I think we have to give the designers credit that they're going to have to take that kind of stuff into account. In my view, they're almost certainly going to have to go back to April 2019, but that is just a guess.
Thank you. And you mentioned that the rates are going down. It's no longer 75%. It's a maximum of 65%, and most of us won't get that. Where can we find out more information about that? Barbara Mahaffey says, do we need to resubmit for period 8 then, or how do we know about what we're supposed to be entitled to get?
It flows directly from the revenue numbers that you provide on the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet asks you for the revenue numbers for your current month, or for argument's sake, comparing October 2020 to October 2019. Or comparing it to the average of January and February, and it also asks you for the same information for the prior 2 months.
Right.
So it starts to, what it's doing is it's averaging things out. I've reported, I had a month where my revenue went up.
Mm.
Okay. And then, 2 months where my revenue went down. It averages it out, but the result is entirely based on what your revenue does in terms of the percentage rebate that it tells you you're going to be able to claim.
Right. And Michelle in the chat is pointing out that both you and I didn't mention that, of course, there's a maximum amount per employee for the Qs. So it used to be $870 a week. So it's 75% of up to a maximum, right? And is her number right, or how does it work?
I'm hedging on that percentage is coming down as well. I don't have the changing ones memorized, but I thought it was something like 500 and something.
Yeah.
They are managing it down, but the key is it's based on the spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. Like you have to put in your data, and the spreadsheet will adjust the caps each month according to the formulas that the government is using to try to wind things down.
So you're not only telling us to trust the system, you're telling us to trust the government. I don't know whether that's churchy or not.
I
think that's into that.
Yeah, I think that's the best we can do, Stephen, at this point in time, because the formulas even have me confused.
Yeah. And so Chuck is asking, do the Q's revenue mean total church revenue or just the operating fund, excluding, say, capital renovation fundraising?
Well, this is fundraising absolutely counts. This is the kind of detail, Chuck, that we've dealt with in other webinars. I think if you went back to the August 12th webinar, or if you want to send in some specific questions, generally, I mean, the wording in the government regs is all your normal operating revenue. So that would normally include your fundraising events. Nationally, I use bequests because I get enough of them that that's regular revenue that comes in. Some people wonder locally whether they could consider that extraordinary, but there's specific revenue definitions that I don't think we can get into tonight, but are dealt with substantially in the August 12th webinar and the last one in the spring, whatever date that was.
Thank you.
And if you have a specific question, I'm happy, or if you want to send me your email, I'm happy to point you to the specific revenue definitions. If you go Q's FAQ, if you Google that, it'll tell you there as well.
Okay, let's carry on, and I'll just keep collecting questions for the next time we pause here.
Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time. Again, this is in here for any newbies for reference on the off chance that folks haven't explored the bank loan option. These are the rules, and it's got the correct count codes and things in it. What the government has done to tighten it up is to be clear on what expenses are covered, that there is a minimum payroll that needs to exist. And again, we fought long and hard. We fought for several months because we weren't eligible initially. And this wording is key. And the reason I'm hyping on it again today is it also is an issue for some of the provincial grant programs that are coming out. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Newfoundland, Labrador for sure, and Manitoba have live programs right now where there's some lobbying going on of this nature. Governments think that charities and churches are incorporated, and most are. But as it happens, the United Church isn't, and we're relatively unique. So this is the wording that was changed that allowed us to qualify, allowed some of us to qualify for the bank loan program. And it's in here. Again, there's some reference here to what you can, like the types of expenses that you need to have. And it doesn't, when you borrow this money, it doesn't need to be because you have these expenses to pay. It means you had the expenses even the year. So if you had expenses in January and February, it still counts because the whole point being, if you had to deplete your savings to pay, to keep the heat on, the government's trying to recognize that that's not how the world's supposed to work. So the loan is for your expense structure, not your expenses owing at the moment you're applying for the loan. So I just spoke about provincial grant programs. Feel free to chip in if there's anyone in provinces out there where you've heard of something. I only know the ones where folks call me and ask if they're potentially available. So I can tell you there's something called the Manitoba Bridge Grant, which is a $5,000 grant. It's a slam dunk grant with one proviso. You're a community organization. You were either closed or have had revenue shortfalls. There's an online application, but there is a field in that application that asks for a corporation number. So I have got an inquiry in to the senior folks in Manitoba, and I got a cabinet officer email that Judy Hare forwarded, where they're looking at it. They're looking to fix it. They don't intend to exclude United Churches. But right now, there's a field in the online application that unless you plug a number in like 0, which I've done, it won't work. In Newfoundland, they specifically mention incorporated entities, but they talk about community organizations and charities and nonprofits. In both cases, it's very clear to me that they intend for us to be eligible. There's just a bit of lobbying going on. So I would guess that even next week and the following week, we'll know more about it. And if there are other provinces that have a program, feel free to let me know, and I'll update this slide and other slides for it. So that's the government programs. The back half of this is going to be more internal and budgety and all that kind of stuff. So just wondering if there are other questions out there, Stephen.
Yeah, there's a few. And friends, by all means, continue to add to the chat. Here's 3 on the wage subsidy. There's this diminishing return as we move through period 7, period 8, period 9, and so on. Is that going to continue to diminish, or is it leveling off for 2021, or do we know yet?
We don't know yet, but it was supposed to go to 0 in December. So there's a constant adjusting thing. It's the same as the infection rate. So COVID, right? Like it was supposed to be down. So I can't tell you. I think as taxpayers and so on, we probably think it's proper that the government needs to be weaning itself and us off of this stuff. All kinds of national debt and all that. But the short answer is we don't know. But it for the moment, the plan is to have taken it to 0 by June. The plan had been to take it to 0 by December 2020. And stay tuned.
And we were groping for the maximum per person, and Peter points out the maximum queues for period 7 is 564.50. Yeah. So it is tapering off too, and so that's a maximum per employee. So not a maximum for a whole payroll, but you can't have more than that per employee.
Yeah. We do know that period 9 was changed in the way the calculations are made, so it's not as large a taper as it was going to be. Okay. But period 10 and beyond has not been discussed yet.
So just stay tuned and watch the spreadsheet. I use it every month.
Yeah, and there are folks out there who, frankly, felt that their finances were stable enough that they were choosing not to apply. And I said, fine, that's your choice. And but the point being that once the 30% threshold rule, 30% revenue reduction fell away, what I'm saying now to people, there had to be some months where your revenue dipped. You have to decide whether it's worth doing the paperwork. And the good news is that it's not very difficult paperwork to do anymore for anyone who's comfortable with an Excel spreadsheet.
So if your revenue is up 1 month, should you bother doing it at all, or do you just wait until the next month when it's down again?
No, the answer is that you should do it for every month to see what happens. Because if your revenue drops, you can have a claim. Let's say October, your revenue's up, but you were down, significantly, or even 10, 20% in the 2 prior months. Mm-hmm. You will still get a subsidy amount in October. Okay. So you need to literally calculate it every month.
Great. Quick question from James at YouTube, just about the CBO loan. Do you talk to your bank about that? Do you go to CRA? Where do you apply?
Ideally, every time I tell folks to apply online if your financial institution still offers it that way. Don't talk to anybody if you can avoid it. Give them, no, online stuff can go through like within minutes sometimes. So the first test is try to do it online with your financial institution. It needs to be one where you've got a business account. If you don't have a business account, then there's a separate rule. You'll probably have to talk to somebody. But first try online, then talk to your local bank, and they will instruct you on according to your personal circumstance.
Thanks. Couple of questions about provincial grants. You mentioned Manitoba and Newfoundland. A couple of people here mentioning there's one available in Alberta, and they allow us to be registered under a federal act, so we can get up to $5,000 for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else is asking, is there anything like that in Ontario?
Not yet, to my knowledge. There's a variety of programs. I'm going to turn this over to Clyde in a second because he operates majorly in Ontario. But not one that's widely open to charities. There are a variety of rent relief and other small business type programs. Clyde, anything that you're finding for your clients?
There's nothing that I have come across yet, but the Premier did announce today that they were putting a few $1 million or $1 billion into a couple of programs, which sounded like we might be able to hook into.
Yeah.
But until we see the details, we don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds like we've got another webinar to do.
Yeah. And folks, just the other thing, the great thing these days, Google. Like, just what is your government doing for charities? If you put COVID charities and go to your government website, you'll find something. I guarantee it. Whether it's money is a separate point.
Sure. Got a couple of questions about the ADP updates, but I think you're going to cover those next, so I'll hold
next
them.
2 slides coming up.
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay, I think they're the next 2 slides. Let's see. There we go. Team pay. So, this is a quick little and not nearly comprehensive list of some of the things that appeal to me. Okay, I didn't read any of the promotional literature. I don't, that kind of stuff. But folks have been clamoring for this for a long time.
Back up, Eric. What is team pay? I don't know.
Oh, there you go. Team pay is a much more modern and online, real-time payroll system that replaces the fax and the need to phone and the potential for data entry errors because you don't control it yourself. So all the folks that have been saying, can't we just do this ourselves directly and see our work and get our reports anytime we want on any device we want? That's what. So we're basically moving to a better, more advanced, modern payroll system.
So this is a program of ADP.
That's
We're not
right.
switching payroll services. It's just a different program that ADP offers.
That's correct.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm still, the whole idea is that there's still a 1-800 number team. Most of our congregations have also signed up for potential help from Angelica's payroll team, and many of you have dealt with Eileen, who's been doing a spectacular job through all of this. There is one downside, and I put it down there. I don't mince words. There is a price increase, which isn't very much depending on your specific situation, what you've been paying currently, how many employees you're paying for. For most of the smaller places, the increase could be as little as $50 or $60 a month. For larger places, it could be more than that. It could be, even a couple of $100 annual incremental cost. But everyone that I've been hearing from for years has been saying, I'll pay way more, but give me this stuff. So
does it work on Mac computers, or do you still have to have Windows with an old version of IE?
Well, that's just it. It works on everything. It works. I think it even works on like on iPhones and things, which isn't something that I think our audience necessarily wants, but or needs. So here's the thing. Everyone's going to be. You do have to sign an authorization form. We're asking everyone to do that by January. We had a fairly comprehensive email broadcast that went out last week. I hope folks have seen it, and I'm assuming there'll be some questions, and Angelica's here too. But right now what we're doing is we're putting it in background. So the online system basically is going to be, you don't even need to know it's there. You wouldn't necessarily have to know it's there. But the whole idea is to switch to the more modern system. If you're getting paper reports, you'll continue to get paper reports. The only difference will be if you get your own electronic reports, we're going to switch you over to a different access URL, and there's going to be a training video, which we might even offer next week or very soon. But the main thing is we're test driving it out. The announcement has gone out. We do need folks to sign a form authorizing this, but then basically we're going to be looking to do about 200 or so pastoral charges a month over the course of next year, and every person will get one-on-one custom support, talking them through just learning a new system, and their support videos and things. But the most important thing is there'll be literally a hands-on support for this, as opposed to recordings or whatever else. So I think if there were some questions on TeamPay, feel free to ask. Our expert Angelica is here, who's helped.
There's a couple of them, and a lot of them are related to the email, and it's your statement in red at the bottom. Check your junk mail, check your spam. These emails go out to 4,000 different addresses all at once, and some email providers think, oh my goodness, they must be selling you something salacious. So they put it in spam so that it doesn't disturb you. Check your junk folder once a week or twice a week or maybe every other day, because these kinds of emails will sometimes get in there by mistake and you'll miss out on important information. I'll bet you dollars to donuts, everybody, and there's about 5 of you who said you didn't get it, you'll find it in your junk folder.
I have also, hi.
Go ahead, Angela.
It's me, Angelica. I've also posted our website. We are going to be posting the announcement there. We will be posting the acknowledgement form as well. So I've put that already in the chat box, the link to our site. Also, you can email to payroll at United Church and request for more information. I'll be glad to provide you with the announcement that was sent out. It was sent out by UCC. It was not sent out by ADP, the first announcement. So I just want to make that clear that the announcement that went out was by us, UCC, not ADP.
So could you
put going forward, ADP will be sending out more information.
Thank you. So could you put that link to your website in the chat again? And
okay.
I'll make sure we capture that and include it at the recording landing page so that people can find it there afterwards. So a couple of people are saying there was a $150 charge on the November 15 pay remit. What was that about? $150 is a surprise.
It would depend on who they are and what it was. It certainly, I can't imagine that it's anything systemic. The kinds of things that there's normally that kind of charge for are being overdrawn. But anyway, that one, send specifically, feel free to send it to me or to send it to payroll at unitedchurch.ca and we'll deal with it.
So I've got 3 people asking about a $150 charge on different dates in November, but whatever the date was that their payroll comes off. So talk to Eric directly or send a note to Angelica and they can sort that out. The email may well have gone to your church address instead of to your treasurer address, and maybe you have to rattle the chain with your minister or your church administrator if you didn't get it yourself, treasurers.
Yeah, and there's a challenge here because sometimes your payroll administrator isn't your treasurer and various things. This is why we sometimes, I apologize in advance anytime I'm sending an email to 2 or 3 different lists, but we're also trying to, as Angelica noted, put this, make sure some of this stuff is on the web too. So one way or another, we'll get it to you.
Yep, ours came to our office email. I remember seeing it and forwarding it to our treasurer last week or whenever it came in. So And there was dancing in the aisles. They're very excited.
Yeah. No, the only folks, there's, if you're going to be nervous, and by the way, I've been saying this for, 9 months now, but, the $1, I guess it's $1.20 charge per person that some of us have been trying to save by not having them on the, payroll and cutting checks separately and filing separate T4 summaries and all this kind of stuff. It's biting you on the butt now when it comes to these CRA, these CRA programs, and it really is way less work for a dedicated treasurer if you can get past the fact that it costs you $1 a month per employee.
Okay, so Angelica, we need the link to your payroll website, please. People are asking for it. I don't see it here. No, it's not here.
Put it up twice.
No, it's not here. Maybe you're sending it to an individual instead of to everyone.
Or hit enter.
No,
because it's not showing on the chat.
Yeah.
Kathy says that the $150 charge is a mistake. It was a fine for processing on Remembrance Day, and she got it reversed. So if that happened to you, maybe you should call ADP and complain. Perhaps that's what it is.
Well, there's a good answer. I hope the answers are all like that. And,
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Again, it's there is the possibility of error, but there isn't anything that we charge $150 for, to my knowledge, other than an NSF, and that's not what people are describing.
Great, thank you. So Angelica's put that link publicly now, and I've just added it to the YouTube chat as well. Thanks, Angelica.
Okay, so moving along, and happy to come back to questions too. The annual statistics, just to say that federal grant revenue should be reported. There is there's a line on there for government grants. Keep reminding folks it won't impact your assessment. The government revenue also isn't used in any of your revenue calculations when you're doing those month-by-month compares. I say that more for the new people. I think virtually most folks on this webinar probably know that already. One goofy stat that we've had some interesting debates on is, what do we say about weekly attendance this fall? I mean, lots of places are just plain closed, and others were open for some bit of time. And what we're saying is count your online attendance if that's what you have. And if you were closed and your attendance was 0, report that. But I can tell you the year 2020 is going to have a giant asterisk beside it, just the way Roger Maris's home run record of 61 home runs in 1961 had a big asterisk beside it, and still does, frankly. So, the whole year is going to be an asterisk in our lives. So moving on a little bit to actual budget things that might be helpful, I hope. I'm telling folks nationally to cut me some slack. I'm telling my governors that to the extent that I might offer a remotely precise budget, it ain't happening next year. Like there's just so many unknowns that you literally just have to, I'm not saying make it up, but whatever number you put down, help communicate to your audiences what degree of certainty it has. There was a time when a rent number would be relatively firm because your rental arrangements were relatively firm. Who knows? Okay, so and similarly, the extent of government subsidies, we don't even know what the amounts are. I personally would not budget any and see what your operating deficit might look like, and then say, gee, if we got $10,000 or $20,000 of subsidy next year, that would be a almost found money. Similarly with the timing of opening,
who knows?
Every province is in a different place from what it was a month ago. And I won't even single out any province names in terms of how dramatically things can move around. So this obviously has a residual impact on rentals, regular giving, the potential for special appeals. We've had, on balance, the subsidies and people responding and so on is, I'm hearing that a lot of folks are going to be okay for 2020, but worried about what 2021 looks like. And frankly, the national church structure is in that boat, and I suspect many congregations are too. And I can't give you a lot of guidance. I mean, other than to say, whenever you're the treasurer, you're just the messenger. So you've got to make sure people understand your assumptions. And like, when I was first a treasurer, people used to plug the donation line to make the budget balance. And I'd say, well, that's very nice, but I don't do that unless you tell me that we can make that money somehow, or you're going to ask for it so effectively that it's going to come in. I'm going to put in how much of it is a plug. Next year, you're going to have to tell people how much is a plug on more than one line on your revenue statement. And, that just is what it is. Hopefully, your membership is in a position to remain supportive, but time will tell. So how much subsidy to budget for? You might start with zero. You might want to budget that your rent comes back in the back half of the year. Anybody who's budgeting full rental stream in January, I think, is naive. I don't care what province you're in, but you have to, again, with your board, with your finance committee, try not to do it alone. It's a horrible burden to play with scenarios and numbers that can be discouraging. When is the church going to be open? I got nothing for you. Is whatever's happened a dip or a new normal when we come out of it? So let me say the specifics. The assessment is held level for the majority of congregations. It's the third year of the quote unquote transition, where any increases are potentially on the horizon for 2022. The cost of living impacting the minimum salary grid has been public for many months now, I think, but it's 2.2%. There's some, again, it's 50 or 100 bucks, or at most maybe 200, or for the biggest churches, 3. But minor increase in payroll costs depending on the timing of your migration. I mean, if you switch over, if you're ultimately scheduled to switch over in November, it won't hit your budget much at all. We've also been asked what insurance premium levels to budget for. And if you took a significant bump this year, I've talked to our broker and our insurance company. We can't promise, there's claims and it's not like insurance companies aren't in it to make money too. But the hope would be that the main spike was this year. However, if you were in the March group of renewals, you probably only got a 10% increase. The real big increases started in June and September and December. So, what we're saying there is maybe put in 10% a premium increase for budget purposes. And if it's less than that, that's a win. So those are some of the budget suggestions that we have for you. Again, normally you're having your budget, you've got your budget assumptions, you're firming up by now, or certainly, maybe in December, depending on your schedule. You probably have an annual meeting scheduled for February. You report your statistics in March. You have the face-to-face annual meeting where you get grilled on it. A lot of that didn't happen this year. Many of you did have your annual meetings in, say, even February or really early March, but a lot of folks haven't even had one. And we've already relaxed the government's requirements for COVID. Some of the stuff it says in the manual, there's obvious dispensation for. The world will not end if some church doesn't have an annual meeting with everyone bringing in sandwiches. I say, and this isn't the official church, this is just Eric, and I've said this for my own congregation, have an annual, you know, we're doing weekly broadcasts that are well received and attended by a ton of people. Folks have learned to use this stuff. Do your annual meeting online. But if you don't have the tech capacity to do that, or and certainly people, there's no reason people should be confident about gathering in person right now. It's okay to hold off. And literally tomorrow, this is, I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm supposed to do this, but I honestly don't care. Literally tomorrow, the General Counsel Executive is receiving a proposal, and this is the official language in the proposal. They'll almost certainly approve it, but the whole idea is to authorize, like, relax certain requirements in the manual because we're in exceptional COVID times. So this has to do with some of the pastoral relations things. For you treasurers, the requirement to hold an annual meeting is waived for the moment, at least till June of next year. That's if you don't want to try having an online one. And similarly, the budget approval, which is something people ask about, again, the executive tomorrow is expected to approve the fact that that a congregation board could and should be delegated the authority to approve a budget. So, you know, business can't stop. The business of church can't stop because of COVID or because of the manual. So these points are looking to be in effect till mid next year.
Well, and I can say that in my congregation, we had our annual meeting last Sunday. And we decided that that was as soon as was practicable after the end of the financial year. And it was great. We really did not talk about the program year 2019, but it was an opportunity to step back and look at what's changed since the pandemic. And it gave the whole congregation, who were finally comfortable enough with Zoom to participate, a chance to ask questions and come on board. And everyone went away really, really comfortable. So it was a good thing to do. And I'm glad we waited until people were no longer so afraid of the technology.
But again, you could pass entirely, or if the technology doesn't work in your context yet, or if people aren't there yet, that's okay too. But get some form of budget approved. Well, right now, you can. Some of you might be approving the 2020 budget, and so be it.
We called it a financial forecast rather than a budget.
There we go. There we go. So that's a couple of things on the governance side. I'm going to switch gears, if I may, unless there's any. Are there any questions on the budget?
Nothing on budget. A couple of questions we can back up. How is the COLA set? The cost of living increase, 2.2% is, some people are complaining, seems high. Somebody else was saying maybe it's based on earlier years. How does that come about?
Yeah, basically there's a Statistics Canada reference that we pull, and there's always a 1-year lag. So this is one of these. Normally we're criticized because our cost of living increase seems low. But this is one where the 1-year lag is resulting in a situation where it feels a little higher. So, and again, it impacts the minimum salaries only. Sure. My own church, for example, for other, granted a lower cost of living increase because, as it happens, our ministers are above the minimum. And we felt that the COLA number that we wanted to use was less than that. I'm just telling you what impacts the minimum, and a lot of folks use that, for a benchmark for making their local decision.
Sure, thanks. Couple of requests to go back to the previous slide on the governance motions. When those are decided, how will these folks know? How will it be announced that the proposal you're bringing has been passed?
Well, this is one because of the governance side of it. I would assume, well, first of all, it will be communicated through whatever our normal governance communication channels are. But I would think that every region would have it in their newsletter. If they have one this week, This will be featured prominently in region communications as well, because it's obviously a key governance element.
We all know that you care. Somebody's asking about quorum for annual meetings. Quorum is actually pretty small. I was surprised when I double checked it. My congregation has 117 members. We required 20. So check the manual, and the most recent copy of the manual is at the General Council website, and you may be surprised to find that you can meet quorum without too much difficulty.
Yeah, I would agree with that, although I don't know what the numbers are.
If we had had 99 members, our quorum would have been 10.
There you go.
Because we had 117, it would have been 20. I don't know what it is for bigger than that, because I'm in a smaller church, so I can do 2 jobs instead of 1.
Okay, so I don't know if there's other questions on that. We're winding down in any case.
That's what I'm seeing here. Oh, okay. Somebody says, how can we authorize a 2.2 increase when some churches are laying off ministers?
Again, individual. These are all local decisions, and to some degree have to have an element of what the local situation is.
Yeah. I would acknowledge, though, that your ministers are probably putting in more hours and working harder because of the pandemic. And while ministers don't go into this for money, that is one of the ways that our society says thank you. So let's remember where your money is, where your heart is, your treasure is, right? Or where your treasure is, your heart is. So that's part of how we make decisions in our church and express our mission.
That's the general way that we went last night at one of our church board meetings, was that 2.2 does not cover the work that the staff and minister have put in over this past 10 months.
I have not yet met a minister who isn't working harder than usual. And I meet a lot of ministers in my job. Yeah. So just to acknowledge that. I know the rest of the world is too. And I know there are financial realities, but this has been hard on all of us.
So it's a bit of a tough segue for me to take that heartfelt plea to talk about boring old insurance. But I want to flag a couple of things, because particularly we've had it really slack. Like we've had relative terms, but when we moved our program 3 or 4 years ago to RSA, one of it was to contain premium increases, and we didn't have premium increases, I think, for the first 3 years. Certainly the first 2 years, and I think it was 3. However, it's important to note that every company that we've seen is raising rates significantly, and it's a response to all kinds of things. But what we're seeing, I'm talking to the roughly half the churches in the country are with the UCC Protect program, and we're asking for insurance applications. My own church hadn't filled in an application in over a decade. They've just been automatically renewed. But the point is, everyone's being asked for one now, because the insurance companies are way stricter. There's all kinds, whether it's climate change, it's not so much COVID, but the fact that we have, in many cases, aging buildings and so on. So they're making us jump a few more hoops for sure. They're looking for a current application. They're going to be, at their own cost, inspecting more of our buildings. They're actually going to be doing thermal imaging of our wiring systems to potentially warn us of possible risks. There's been interest in checking whether you have enough insurance. If you're with the United Church program, UCC Protect, and you complete your application with the dimensions and with the type of construction and so on, part of the renewal process is going to be telling you how you measure up compared to this rough valuation tool. It's not the same as a valuation that you'd have to pay for. I mentioned this earlier, but hopefully with the big increases in 2020, we'll see less upward pressure in 2021. But again, I can tell you in Southern Ontario, in the London area, there were a couple of church fires about a month ago. Now, neither one of them hit our program, but again, these were vacant church buildings are actually higher risk than a busy, thriving church building. I had a question today on hey, we're not using our church. It's like, the argument is when you're not driving your car, your premium should go down, and that makes sense. But when it comes to building insurance, it's the other way around. When your building's empty, there's a whole bunch more risk factors of vandalism and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm not an apologist for the insurance company. I hate this. I told you before, I never thought I'd brag about spending months to negotiate limiting the increase to 30%. It made me sick to my stomach. Moving to the next slide. Directors and officers coverage. This is one that you all have. You're covered under the umbrella program. I've had a number of churches who after it's been in place since 2010, but who didn't know, and we're also paying for their own D&O coverage. Several people have saved between $300 and $1,500 by sending us an email and saying, "Is this really true?" But the whole idea was to provide this coverage on an umbrella basis because a lot of folks didn't know what it was. And it's the kind of insurance, it's a very low claim frequency. It's the kind of thing that doesn't arise very often. And it was actually a whole bunch of church members who were lobbying me for this literally 10 years ago. So we have had to make a change in carrier though, because Royal Sun Alliance, our carrier, isn't dumping us, is fully exiting the directors and officers liability insurance business. So that means we have to take it to another company. Again, insurance companies are jumpy and a little stickier, and I'm going to pay more for this. But one thing when you change insurers with this type of stuff, you need to know how claims work. And so again, treasurers and I think the main contact at church, there was a broadcast email a few weeks ago where we said, if you have a potential claim, you need to have reported it to the current insurer, because if it's something you already knew about, the new insurer will not cover it. I didn't expect to get any emails from you because, frankly, if you have a situation, you should have already reported it. But as a precautionary measure, our new insurer asked that we broadcast that email. So no action required if you have nothing to report. There's nothing to pay. The new certificate will be online probably in the next week or so. Right, it's effective December 1st, and we're still negotiating, and we've got quotes from 3 or 4 companies and blah, 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 blah. So that's the world of insurance. Are there any questions on that part, Stephen, or should I keep
I'm not seeing insurance questions. There's questions about home office expenses. So when you get to there, we'll raise those. Yeah, no, insurance bores people. There's no question. Except for having to pay it. It's the kind of thing where you hate to pay for it until you need it, right? And you're glad you have it.
Yep, the church loan program. So the $10,000 program is still out there. And remember, the foundation made a significant grant during the emergency, particularly craze time in the spring. I've spent the summer negotiating a large line of credit for the denomination. Not for operational purposes, but to be there. If we bump into another March like we had, to potentially be available for churches that aren't able to get a local line of credit, that kind of thing. So there'll be more detail coming on that. But right now we have the emergency church loan program for $10,000. For some bigger churches, that's not enough to do much of anything. So we will have some additional loan facility. What I've said to the governors is that hopefully I don't even use it, but if I had to, I could go get $10 million to help our congregations for bridge financing and the kind of line of credit stuff that you might do for seasonal situations or temporary shortfalls. These aren't grants. This would be, very much a loan program. But just know that there's more capacity to help get us through this. So as we prepare for, we're winding this up, folks, or I am anyway. The 2021 budget, just in the same way that I said, disclose all your assumptions and write them down when you were defining your revenue and measuring, those things. You need to do that with the 2021 budget too. Like, you need to say to folks, there's a lot of unknowns here. So this is what we're doing to contain expenses. I would echo what Stephen said. I know the ministers at my church are doing more than, like going like full speed plus. And, I don't know that every minister is like Stephen doing like almost daily worship services, but there's all kinds of things going on. So try, basically we're going to try to keep that going, that different way of doing things. And if possible, try not to do any draconian cuts until we start seeing what the other side of this thing looks like. Compensation changes for January. We talked about the cost of living increase. Whatever else, those are changes that you need to submit to ADP the same old way that you've always done it. The 2020 T4 summary is with you already. We've talked a little bit about that and the boxes and all that stuff, but that's normal treasurer work that isn't any different this year, but is, obviously needs to be done to set up next year. 2021, as I say, we're going to have this PD 27 form. The T4s are going to be done for us, any changes there. The 2021 assessment notices and so on, as much as possible, I'd really invite everyone, wherever you can, to try to set yourself up more and more for electronic payment. People don't even want to touch checks right now. So if as many of you did last year, if you could set that up on a par schedule with us, it would be less work for you and less work for us. Similarly, mission and service transfers don't lend themselves as much to par because they're a little more variable. But if you can consider sending those by Interact payment or e-transfer, we have instructions on the website for you on how to do that. National church statistics, again, it's going to be an asterisk year, but we still ask you for that information.
Well, then let me jump in there, Eric, just as a member of the communications division. One of the things we look at really carefully are all the email addresses you give us. And if you didn't get the treasurer's email that went out last month, it may be because whoever did the statistics last March didn't include the right email. So that's another possibility. These things are, I took over doing that last year when we changed admins and discovered that we had several out-of-date emails that had just been copied from year to year to year, and then people were complaining they didn't get the information. So these statistics are important, and not just to the national church, but also to you. It's how we reach out to you.
And having said that, we're about to, I don't know how many of you out there have created your church hub accounts, which you would have had to do if you were like having a change of minister and so on. But we've invested heavily in building an online capacity that will work on any device, that will work on your Macs, an online portal for churches, and frankly, that's where all this information is going to reside over the course of next year. We won't have these, the somewhat goofy blue form process. We're going to try to get you to do that all online. You'll be able to see it. You input it yourself, and it's there to check right away. Same with your assessment statements and so on. So Church Hub account, if you aren't the one who knows of it, you should check to see if your church is set up already. And of course, we talked about the transition to team pay. So if you sign your authorization early, you can potentially get onto team pay sooner than some other folks. But we're going to want those authorizations from everybody, and then do batch processing, like 200 a month or something like that, so that we can give everyone one-on-one hand-holding treatment as we switch over to a fully online system.
Couple of questions. A question here about Church Hub. Right now, they're only giving one login per church. Is that going to change?
I should know, but I honestly don't.
I don't either. That's why I asked you. It's so new, right?
I can get back to folks. Certainly the idea, ministers will have a login for sure, and then I think churches may be somewhat limited because the whole idea is to try to maintain data integrity to the extent we can. But that'll be the way we get the most current email addresses as well.
Thank you.
So here we've got some contact lists, and if I don't have payroll on there, I do have payroll on there. Good. These are the various email addresses that you can use. None of you are shy about emailing me, and that's perfectly fine too. And again, if there are specific questions, I think Stephen identified a few early on that folks had some relatively unique wage subsidy questions. Fire them over, and if they're remotely difficult, I'll dump them on Clyde as fast as I can.
Just in that line, Eric, for the next little while, be sure to send them to the help desk, the CRA help desk at United Church, because my own email is down.
Yeah, no, I understood.
Has been for a week, and I don't know what's out there. How many of you have asked a question and I can't respond?
Yeah.
Well, and I should also acknowledge that the theme of next week's webinar is Ask Us Anything, and there is a question button on the advertising for that at United and Learning, and all those emails come to me, and I just fire them off to Eric. So many ways to get to Eric.
Right.
And he will answer them all next week and know everything.
Well, whatever else is screwed up. Yeah. So, folks, I don't know if there are some other questions, but again, hope this is what you were looking for in terms of information. And if it isn't, I hope you've gotten something into the chat box that
there's a few things in the chat box, not a lot, to be fair, a lot of commentary and not necessarily a lot of questions, but a couple of people asking about filing T2200 tax forms for individuals who have to work from home, which may be more important for lay employees since the clergy get the clergy residence deduction. But are you recommending that? Are you doing that for your staff?
We haven't pulled the trigger on that. I mean, as a practical matter, that's going to be a tax time thing. We've been waiting. The government did some significant consultation on this in September and has been talking about issuing relaxed guidelines. I haven't seen the new relaxed guidelines, but the short answer is yes, probably. And we'll through our HR side or possibly through your region, get you some more communication on that. The just for folks who don't know what that is, in particular, the rules say that if you work more than half the time in a year away from your office and your employer has required you to do that, then you're entitled to write off a bunch of home office related expenses and some other things that if your employer has said that you need to write off some expenses. This is a significant topic for lay people. It also applies to ministers, but you can't claim the same household expenses twice. So ministers, to the extent that they have a clergy residence deduction, have way less
there's not much more claim
room to maneuver. But let me say this, I believe we will be signing it. We've been holding off on a directive, waiting to see what the government provides for direction here. But at the end of the day, it's a tax question. And there's no question that people have had to, our office nationally has been closed since March 17th. We went to reopen it in October, and we've had a skeleton staff in there. I have folks in to process checks, which is why I want you to do it electronically instead. But many of you have had your offices closed for months and months too. So I expect that it will be okay to sign a T2200, but there's also a new, more streamlined T2200 and new rules coming I haven't looked, frankly, in the last couple of weeks. I don't believe they've come. I would have read about it in the paper.
The new one is not out yet, and the first draft we saw of it was twice as long as the original one.
Yeah, well, I got nothing on that. Yeah.
There you go.
So, but if anyone's thinking, should they sign it? I like, if you're getting pressure and for some reason, there's not a lot of downside to signing it, frankly. It's just whether there's going to be more guidelines for people that are coming out.
So no doubt when something more comes, we will schedule another webinar and you will tell us all about what you've learned by 3 o'clock in the afternoon of that day.
That's the rule.
Yep.
I sent off a panicked email to Eric this afternoon saying, I haven't heard from you yet. Have you forgotten? And he said, oh, no, I just haven't written it yet. We're still getting new information.
Yeah, no, there's literally some stuff that changed yesterday. So folks, I don't know if there are other questions, but I just can't keep saying enough. Thank you for being a treasurer. We did not sign on for this. And we long to see this kind of picture in community sometime soon.
Yeah, I delivered an Advent wreath to a family who will light it on our Zoom service on Sunday. I delivered it this afternoon. It came out of my workshop yesterday. So there you go. We need to draw this to a close. I'm not seeing a lot of extra questions. Somebody was asking about the recording and the slide deck and all of that. As I've done for each of the other 13, I will make a landing page at the United in Learning site that will include a PDF copy of all of the slides and live links to all of the resources that Eric has provided links for in the slides. And it may not happen till tomorrow morning, but I will get it up there as soon as I can. And thank you for your comments and questions. It's and thank you for the work that you do. My goodness, where your treasure is, there your heart is. You folks are managing the mission of the church, not just its resources. And what you do matters. So thank you for that. Also to acknowledge, Eric mentioned the Mission and Service Fund at the beginning. This webinar is not brought to you by the Mission and Service Fund. This webinar is brought to you by the Denominational Assessment. That's who pays Eric's salary. That's who's paying for our Zoom connections and all of that. If you've ever wondered what that assessment is for, well, here it is. And we're delighted to be able to share this with you. Thank you. We'll look forward to next week where we have a chance to ask anything and everything. There's that question button at the United in Learning email, or you can just send your questions directly to Eric or directly to me, and I will forward them on to Eric. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but he seems to give a personal reply to the questions as well as collect them for the webinar. So you might hear from him directly if you ask. In the meantime, I'm going to take Eric and Clyde and Angelica into a private room so that we can debrief with each other. I will say goodbye to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much, friends. Bye for now.
Thank you.